Good afternoon and welcome to today's ChemCareers webinar, which is on building your leadership skills. My name is Laura Woodward. I am one of the career and professional development advisors here at the Royal Society of Chemistry, and I'm joined today by one of our members, Dr. Natalie Belzy. I'll get her to quickly introduce herself now.
Hi everyone. Yes, my name is Natalie. I'm a senior scientist at the National Physical Laboratory in London, and I'm also a senior lecturer at University of Surrey. And I'm obviously a chemist by training, but I work now in drug delivery, particularly across the skin, and new methods to visualize drugs and tissues.
Brilliant, thank you. So today's webinar, we're going to cover a few things. I mean, firstly, just to point out, obviously we are limited by what can be covered in a short webinar, but hopefully this webinar gets you thinking and hopefully inspired in terms of thinking about your leadership skills. And the plan is really that I'm going to go over a few slides and really talk about highlighting what leadership skills and qualities look like and how they can support your career generally, you know, more broadly, as well as thinking about moving into management and leadership roles. And also we'll hear from Natalie, who's going to sort of share her story and her experiences and hopefully bring some of what I'm talking about a bit more to life. And then towards the end, I'll also share some tools and tips for helping you kind of reflect and think about the skills that you've got, the skills that you want to develop, and thinking generally about your sort of professional development. So to start with, the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development states that leadership can be defined as the process of influencing people to achieve a common goal. But there's no kind of single definition or concept of what leadership is, which makes it a bit more complex and interesting. But they do go on to identify that there are three integral elements to leadership and leadership skills. So one is around self, and that's thinking about the skillful expression of your personal qualities. The other part is around other people, so thinking about your team. So really that's thinking about those skills of influencing, motivating, inspiring staff, being a line manager, and that might be inspiring those your own staff, but also around inspiring peers, senior managers, and also other stakeholders. And also it's around this aspect of getting the job done. So it's about specifying, defining, clarifying, reviewing and revising when needed the task to be achieved. And as I've put there in my slide, you know, it's worth just understanding that leadership skills, those qualities, can't be demonstrated just through paperwork or specific qualifications alone. It's a lot around personality, initiative and interaction, and they're all of these things are important within the working environment, as well as obviously your specific qualifications and knowledge. And as we say, there's a number of skills that are required to be a good leader, and it's really important to recognise that a lot of those skills are entirely transferable, whether you're moving into a leadership role or not. I've just noticed that someone's asking a question, so oh right, that's fine, that can wait. Just a flag, do type in questions as we're going through. What I'll do is I'll ignore them for now, but what we'll do is try and get through some of those towards the end of the session. We may not get through all of them, but we'll try and get through a few of those towards the end. So why are leadership skills important? So more and more, it's become more and more important and more apparent, you know, perhaps even more so in the last 12 to 18 months, that for organisations and individuals to be more agile, all employees need to demonstrate leadership qualities. So even if you're just starting out in your career, you need to be thinking about those qualities even if you're not necessarily thinking about becoming the next CEO or the next, developing into a PI role or whatever that is. Those skills are really, really important. And the aims, and they can show progression potential, they can help you stand out, and they can be beneficial to the company as a whole as well as you as an individual. And it's important, I think, to recognise that progression does not have to mean going up the ladder. Progression can be shown and can be undertaken in a variety of different ways. And also the aims and focus of the leadership skills that you're developing will change depending on the level you're working at, and also depending on the organisation. So different organisations will have different leadership styles and skills that are going to be important to you. The other thing to think about is to recognise that management and leadership are not the same things. So the prospect site here, I've highlighted 7 skills that they identify for a successful management career. So here we've got interpersonal skills, which I've touched on. We've got communication and motivation, organisation and delegation, forward planning and strategic thinking, problem solving and decision making, commercial awareness and mentoring. And one of the ways of thinking about those slight differences between management and leadership is perhaps management can be seen as being more about the things and the tasks and the doing and the delegating, and leadership is more about the people and how you engage, motivate and interact with others. But as you can see with that list, many of those things go hand in hand, and they're really important for demonstrating those leadership skills. And again, recognise that you will be doing some of these at all stages of your career, whether you are in a leadership role or not. And as I've already said, it's important to recognise that there's not one sort of blueprint or template of what a good leader looks like. But again, there tends to be kind of common themes around how a good leader is likely to be described by others. And some of those are listed there above. So a good leader is likely to inspire employees to be more productive. They communicate effectively with those around them, and that's not just to their staff, but everyone. So to other managers, to stakeholders, to perhaps to people above them. And also they develop a good level of trust with those that they lead. It's important, as part of this kind of understanding of your own skills and experiences, take time to reflect yourself on, which leaders have inspired you. What did they do that made them good to work for? Think about in the wider sense as well. Who do you see who is a good leader, and think about the qualities that they demonstrate by being a good leader. And as we've said, a lot of those qualities and skills are probably things that you can already demonstrate. They're probably things that you are doing already. So things like inspiring motivation, effective communication, positivity, delegating, creativity, responsibility, time management, influencing, decisiveness. They don't all have to be at this sort of higher level. A skill is a skill. It's a skill wherever you're doing it and however you're showing it. And it's really important to recognise how transferable a lot of the skills that you're developing, particularly relating to leadership, can be transferred into other roles. So spend that time, think about what you do that demonstrates this already, and identify opportunities to build on them. So whether that's internally or externally, and really think about maybe where you've got those gaps, what you can do to build on those skills. So I'm going to move now to Natalie, who's been sat there patiently listening away to me, and just ask you a few questions, Natalie, around your own experiences of kind of building on those skills and developing those skills. And I guess to start with, just a broader question is around kind of what you did in terms of developing those careers, those leadership skills, and were there any sort of particular activities that you undertook in order to develop those skills?
Yeah, sure. So it started off fairly informally, as I guess it probably does for most people. So as a PhD student, I was allocated a master's student to sort of to mentor and take care of. And again, as I progressed to a postdoc, I would look after the PhD students and help support them. But then when I joined MPL, I was quite fortunate that there was quite a sort of a strong management structure and an awful lot of training courses available. So my line manager was very supportive and encouraging that I started undertaking some of these courses. So when I first started line managing, I was put onto a sort of a new management training program. I also got myself a mentor, which was really, really helpful. And I recommend to try and find somebody who understands your role within the organization, but somebody you don't directly work with. That can be really, really helpful. So they aren't sort of biased and you know that they're sort of taking an objective view of some of the discussions. And obviously, you know, with an agreement that you talk in confidence, that can be incredibly helpful. But also following the lead of others I work with. So obviously I work with a lot of other people around me, and I find it very useful to look at their leadership styles and try to you know, appreciate the strengths and weaknesses. And obviously feedback is also incredibly important. So I think, yeah, certainly that can be very, very beneficial, because I think a lot of us, we're not so great at recognizing our own strengths and weaknesses. So it can be really, really useful to have that feedback. And it's also really important to get feedback from both from above and from below. So you want to make sure that everybody, you know, who maybe your line manager is happy with what you're doing, but also you want to know that perhaps your PhD students that you're managing or junior staff members also feel happy with you as a manager and that you're doing a good job in supporting them too.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lots of courses to go on to help develop some of these skills, and also sort of personality matching and all of these types of things can be really, really helpful to understand how different we all are and how we
Yeah, absolutely. And was there anything that worked particularly well or stands out for you in terms of how you've kind of built your skills as a leader?
I don't think that there was a kind of a eureka moment as such. It really takes time and experience. And for me, learning from others. So I was, you know, reasonably confident managing people perhaps with less experience than me, but occasionally you come up with something a little bit more challenging, and then I would usually go and speak to somebody else about it, so a mentor or maybe my line manager, just to seek advice, because I think these things come with experience. So yeah, when you really do get stuck, don't be frightened to talk to somebody else about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that you don't have to always know the answers, and there's always support. Yeah, absolutely. What did you find more difficult or harder to develop, and how did you overcome this? What sort of things did you do to tackle that?
So I'd say for me, there were two situations when I found it a little bit more tricky. So one was when I was asked to line manage somebody who had a lot more experience than I had. And I personally, I felt a bit uncomfortable about that. My line manager was very reassuring and said, you know, it's very much just fulfilling the role of, you know, collecting feedback, providing that, and going through the paperwork. But I felt like I was lacking the right level of experience to give him the what was really needed. I felt so yeah, I felt a little bit uncomfortable about that. The other times when I think it can be really hard is when you're managing somebody who's very different to you, because sometimes that can be a bit frustrating. But I think it's also really, really important that we don't essentially surround ourselves with carbon cutouts of ourselves, because that's not a good way to build a team. We need to recognize that everybody's an individual and we all have strengths and weaknesses, and we want to build a complementary team of people that work together. But of course, sometimes, you know, somebody might be struggling with something that you maybe take for granted a little bit, and that you have to be a little bit careful to make sure that you're treating everyone fairly and giving everyone the support they need, because obviously everybody's different, and what might be right for one person will be completely wrong for somebody else. So recognizing that it's not a uniform approach for everyone is really, really important.
Yeah, that's a good point. And was it a sort of, thinking about your career and how it's progressed, was it a conscious decision to build those leadership skills? Did you know you wanted to move into a leadership role?
I have to be honest, I didn't really give it any proper thought at the time. I think I kind of informally sort of been taking on more responsibilities, and I'd sort of inherited a PhD student unexpectedly when a staff member left, and gradually these things built up. But for me, the kind of formal leadership of a small science area took place due to restructuring, and I wasn't really expecting it. And I sort of entered a room as somebody who was always given something to do, and then suddenly I was in charge, and I was a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit a bit nervous, but yeah, it just takes a little bit of while to customize yourself to that idea, and you aren't alone, and you are a team, so ultimately you can always draw on everybody in the team and work as a team. So yeah, I was a bit frightened at the start, but yeah, I'm getting used to it.
But I think it demonstrates that point, doesn't it, that I was saying at the start, of actually you will be building leadership skills, whether it's conscious or not, and
Yeah.
clearly people recognize that in you, and you'd been demonstrating those things that gave them that confidence that you would be able to kind of step into that role and do that position competently.
Yeah, I think there'd been a lot of very sort of informal mentoring and informal management, and now it's kind of become a more formalized role, which is actually really nice, because now we're sort of formally recognized for the time that we're spending doing those activities, and also, you know, for your CV and stuff, it's nice to say
Yeah,
that you're line managing and all of these things.
yeah.
So yeah,
And can you tell me what you think the most important skills you utilize as a leader are?
I would say trust, because I think you have to trust your team, and they have to trust you. Um, I'm very much, and again, I think everybody is a little bit different, so it's really good to get to know your team. But for me, there has to be transparency, and you know, if there's been a problem, I'd like to know about it. I would like to be able to help. Try to reduce blame culture. We don't want people to feel like they've been victimized or anything like that. So it's really important that everybody trusts each other and can be open and honest, because ultimately we're all trying to get towards the same goal.
Mm,
Um, Sometimes it requires a fair bit of patience. And again, like I said previously, everybody responds differently. So I think that's quite a learning curve. I think even for more experienced line managers, when you take on new team members, it takes a while to get to know that person and to understand, you know, the best approach for you to work in the most productive way. So yeah, that's probably the trickiest part, I think.
yeah. And what do you do to ensure you're continuing to develop the necessary skills for your leadership skills?
So I try to continue to attend like relevant training courses. So there's sort of refresher courses, and there's often new courses popping up. So for example, I did a course recently on building confidence and resilience in teams. I think because of COVID, you know, there's
Mm,
been stress, and um, everybody's under a lot of pressure. So that was a really
mm,
useful course to do. But again, I think the requesting sort of 360 feedback has been really, really helpful. And that can be a real struggle. I think when you're providing feedback to somebody more senior to you, that always feels a little bit awkward. And I know for me as well, I choose my words carefully if I'm providing feedback to a more senior colleague. But we really need to try and get over that, because I think it's really, really valuable. And sometimes a nice workaround is to sort of nominate an independent person. So you can say, oh, you know, if you've got some feedback on my performance as the line manager and on this relationship, and perhaps methods, what I'm doing well, what maybe I'm doing less well, or there are areas to improve, you could give that feedback to an impartial
mm,
person, and then let me know anonymously from the people that have provided the feedback, and that can be really helpful. The other methods we've got in our group is sort of setting up anonymous surveys, or like email accounts that you can send information anonymously, and sort of employee kind of feedback mechanisms as well. They could be really, really helpful.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say obviously be polite in your feedback, but certainly it's very, very valuable. And then don't feel like you're criticizing. You know, it should be like constructive feedback, so that somebody can take action based on what you've said.
Yeah, yeah, no, that, yeah, and actually, I'm going to talk in a moment about that skill of reflecting and getting feedback, and how really valuable that is as a CPD tool. So thank you for that, Natalie. I'm just going to share a few more slides, and then we'll open up to questions. I thought it was useful actually at this point to just highlight the attributes and the skills that you develop through doing CChem. So some of you may be CChem, some of you may be doing it, some of you may be thinking about it. And really, when you kind of break down each of those attributes that we gather evidence on, obviously quite a lot of those have leadership within them. So it's worth having a look at those and thinking about the ways that you're going to demonstrate those particular skills by looking at those particular attributes within CChem. And some of the skills that you might consider building on, and some of the activities that you could do, will really depend on kind of where you're at in your career. So even if you're, you might still be a student, and it's still an opportunity, even at that point, to think about your leadership skills. So you could be doing things like engaging in student societies, for example. Some of those skills will be built on and developed through that. As you're progressing your career, it could be things like RSC committees, for example, and participating in those, and again thinking about how that builds on those skills. And I think it's really important to recognize that employers will look at those sort of skills and attributes that complement your technical knowledge. So even if you're not thinking about going into a leadership role, it's really important to kind of think about those sort of broader skills that may well help you into a leadership role, but also complement work more generally. And as I mentioned earlier, kind of building a little bit there on what Natalie was saying, it's really important that we kind of continuously build on our skills. And even more so, I think, as a leader, and a really good practice to undertake is self-reflection, and it's an incredibly underrated activity, because quite often it's difficult to make time for, or we're not quite sure how to do it, and also it can feel uncomfortable. A bit like asking for feedback that Natalie was talking about. It can feel uncomfortable because we're perhaps not used to talking or thinking about ourselves, and whether that's success or failures, and it's really important, and actually has lots of benefits for your long-term career success, and really thinking about your professional development. And you can reflect and record in a way that works for you, and I'll give you some ideas in a moment, but it's a way of kind of getting to know yourself. So it's about taking stock, understanding why you do what you do, and also how you go about doing things. Ask yourself, what can I do differently? And that increases that sort of self-awareness, and can help you kind of understand what's important to you. What do you want your career to look like? Do you want to move into a leadership role? Does progression look different? And an exercise to help you doing this is just simply by sort of journaling, so recording after particular events. So it could be around, it could be that you go to a meeting and you kind of spend some time afterwards reflecting and thinking about what went well. It could be during a mentoring session, it could be during a training session, but getting into that habit of thinking about what you do, why you do it, what's gone well, is really is a really useful tool. And go slowly. It's not something that comes natural to all of us. It doesn't have to be war and peace every day. It could just be a few regular notes. No one else is going to see it, so it's only for you to look at. But start making it a habit, and start thinking about the positives and the negatives. It's really important to recognise that you will learn as much from failure or what didn't go as well as you will from success. And there's some questions here that can support that thinking. So maybe thinking about a specific situation, what would you do differently and why? What have you learned about yourself and your work and others? And more broadly, some wider questions there for that sort of self-reflection. What does a good day look like to you? What does success mean to you? What's gone well this week? And like I say, getting into that habit and that practice can work really well. But absolutely, as Natalie said, seek that feedback from others as well, because that will really support you going forward, and getting that feedback from your line manager, from colleagues, from stakeholders will all help with that kind of self-reflection and thinking about the skills that you have and the skills that you have to offer. We often speak to people who I think really struggle to recognize even that they have transferable skills. They kind of maybe get into this mindset of, well, I've only trained to do this, or well, I've never done that particular role, I've never done a leadership role before. But actually, when they take that time to reflect and consider what those broader skills are that they have to offer, that light bulb goes on, and people can kind of say, oh yeah, actually I do spend time delegating already. Actually, I have had conversations with colleagues to kind of motivate them. And so by doing that regular reflection, it will become second nature, and you'll start to see and understand the skills that you have. We recently, as a careers team, as a membership benefit, have launched these new tools that I would definitely encourage you to go and have a look at. Hopefully, if you remember, you will have received an email about them. Basically, you need to log into your member area, and then that will take you to the careers tools. You'll need to set up a separate account. I'm actually going to just see if I can bring them up on my screen and show you. Can everyone see those, that web page? And you can see here, if we click into things like career assessments, there's lots of nice little exercises. So click here, let's look at personal resilience as an example. There's a questionnaire that you can go through, and that will give you a score. It will give you things to think about in terms of building those skills. Exercises here on personality, management skills, assertiveness, learning styles. So I would definitely encourage people as part of that kind of reflection and thinking about the skills that you have to go and have a look at those tools, because I think they will really support that thinking. Just get back to my slide. It's also worth highlighting at this point, and again Natalie has mentioned the benefits of this, that we do have a mentoring program, and that is open to associate members or above to access a mentor who would be another member, and they would support you with whatever your kind of career goals are at that time. And it might also be worth considering actually not just having a mentor for yourself, so being a mentee, but thinking about the opportunities that being a mentor affords to you. Mentoring someone else is also a really, really good way of building those leadership skills. Having those opportunities to maybe, have difficult conversations with people where you perhaps don't currently have line management experience or responsibilities. It enables you to kind of have that slight you're not in a line management relationship with your mentee, but you might be dealing with some similar things. You might be helping them think about their goals, helping them set actions. So think about mentoring from both the perspective of being a mentee as well as being a mentor. But I would certainly encourage you to go away and have a look at those tools that I've highlighted as well. And if you are interested in mentoring, just get in touch. I'll give you all the contact details in a moment. So that was it for the sort of formal sort of slides and presentations. I'm just going to open up the questions. So bear with me while I just scroll through some of those. And I will get to some of the questions. Okay, someone here has asked about doing CChem. Obviously from mentioning that, and the best thing to do regarding CChem is to go and look on our website and look at the CChem section itself. There's lots and lots of details around the process of applying for CChem. There's a couple of different routes to do that, but I'd also encourage you to just contact the CChem team and have a chat with them. They will always happily advise you on the best ways to do that. So drop them an email. There's a contact us now box to do that. So just get in contact with them, and they'll be able to advise you on that. Oh, someone's saying can't see the presentation. I think hopefully you can see that now. It might have just been when I showed the slides. And again, if anyone wants access to those slides afterwards, just drop me an email. Just email careers@rsc.org. Just ask for the slides and we'll ping those over to you. So just yeah. A couple of people saying they'd be interested in mentoring, which is fantastic. If you are interested in mentoring, just email me at mentoring@rsc.org and I can send you all the details. We do ask our mentors to attend a really short couple of hours training on Zoom, and we give you all the tools. We give you some booklets and sheets, and I can send you all the details, so just drop me an email from that if you are interested in being part of our mentoring scheme. We have a number of mentees waiting actually to be matched, so yeah, if you want to join, if you know colleagues that want to join, please do let them know. And actually we're particularly looking for mentors with an academic background, so again, if you know anybody, please do ask them to get in touch with me. So there's some specific questions around management here that I'm going to put to Natalie, maybe thinking about her experiences. So someone here is asking, and I think maybe you've touched on this already, but what do you think are the top skills for leadership success? Natalie.
Yeah, it's really hard because I think it's one of those things that requires a lot of different attributes. I think I mentioned trust. Again, that's for me, it's a really important one, and openness. That really helps. But I think as well, just a bit of self-reflection is also really helpful as well, because you have to, especially when you're managing somebody who's maybe quite inexperienced or very early in their career, you have to put your mind back to when you were in their shoes and how, the challenges that you faced. And I think sometimes that can be quite helpful. But yeah, it really depends as well on the kind of your position. Are you predominantly just supporting the people below you, but sometimes, for example, you're also having to try and make changes upwards, which can be an added dimension of challenge. So in that case, you really do need to kind of try and improve your negotiation and skills. Sometimes that can be quite important if you want to progress. And also, I mean, not just for yourself, but also to take good care of your team and to make sure that your team is supported and widely recognized. And yeah. looked after within the organization. I think that can be really important. I think there can be two kinds of managers, the sort of more there can be very caring managers who are very focused on their team and their members and taking very care. And then there are occasionally you find people who are they find it more important to them to please the people above them at any cost. And I think it's really important that we remember that as a manager, we're also responsible for the care of the people who report to us as well. And it's not just about pleasing the person up the rung. So
it's the juggle of it all, isn't it? I think it's
really hard. Sometimes you're trapped in the middle, and what's wanted from one person is perhaps not best for somebody else, and trying to find middle ground can often be quite challenging. But I think really their communication is key. So if you can have these difficult conversations with either your managers or perhaps with your reports, openness and sometimes just some justification as well. I mean, sometimes it's not good to give people too much information if it's going to be detrimental, but equally you have to get that balance right, because you don't want people to be sort of jostled around without any justification of why things are changing or what's going on. So yeah, getting the level and also the tone of the communications right is really important.
Someone here, I'm going to answer it first, but then I'll pass it to you as well for comment, Natalie. But someone here asking, I guess, a kind of an observation that sometimes moving into a management role is just being in the right place at the right time and relies a little bit on luck. And I think, to some extent, a lot of our career is like that. Sometimes those opportunities will appear and will be in the right place at the right time. But I would kind of I guess add to that yes, there is that element, but also you need to be demonstrating the skills that they're looking for. So I guess it's again really going back to that point of thinking about, okay, what are the breadth of my skills? What are the skills that I want to develop and that I would have to offer? And again, really recognizing how transferable leadership skills are. You mentioned one just then, Natalie, around having difficult conversations, and actually there may be opportunities where people have done that previously, whether they're in a leadership role or not. So I think what I very much see for people making progress in their career, whatever that progress is those people who are able to really recognise that they have transferable skills and that they can sell those skills. But there will always be an element of being in the right place at the right time to some extent, but you can strengthen that by making sure that you've understood what skills you have to offer and what skills you have to bring. I don't know whether you'd sort of add anything to that particularly.
Yeah, I mean, I think this builds on the self-reflection about being able to identify where you do meet those requirements. You can also try and be a bit proactive. So, for example, if you're already doing a lot of informal line management, maybe perhaps ask your manager to formalize that and say, I'm doing all of this. Would it be possible? I think that can be really helpful. But yeah, I think luck is definitely a huge aspect. I think quite often in terms of progression, it's often when spaces appear and people move to fill the spaces, or for external jobs as well. I mean, you can apply to many positions, but I think obviously the quality of your application is obviously really important, but there is always an element of luck as well in there. So yeah, I think just try to do the best you can on all the bases. And we do, we can't prescribe that we're going to do A, B, C. Sometimes life just doesn't pan out that way, and don't panic when that happens. It's all right. I feel like we all kind of naturally gravitate to an area that suits us well.
Yeah, absolutely. A really good question here, which I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about, is perhaps the individual is, perhaps really good technical person and is, really strong in that, and they recognise that they need to develop, those sort of soft skills, and you've talked about sort of courses that people can go on. But what they're asking is, what about when you perhaps don't have the appropriate environment to apply those concepts or use those skills, do you have any tips around ways you could kind of develop those or practice those skills? I mean, one thing that I would say is obviously the mentoring scheme is a really good way of doing that, and would absolutely encourage people to think about that, because you don't need to be an expert, you don't need to know everything, you don't need to be at the top end of your game in terms of your career to be an excellent mentor. And it's a really, really great way of developing some of those tools that I meant, those kind of skills that I mentioned before, around having perhaps having difficult conversations with your mentee, helping them set goals and achieve those goals. So for me, one of those top things that you could do is become a mentor. Natalie, I don't know whether you've got anything to add to that.
No, that's absolutely, I would completely agree. I mean, the other thing is, if you aren't in a workplace that offers lots of these soft skills courses, I think there are now, I mean, for example, the RSC, there are many other online resources which I think you can probably access for free. So I think it's definitely worth pursuing some of those independently if your workplace isn't offering it, or perhaps maybe make a suggestion to your line manager that maybe that would be really helpful to you, and would it be possible to organize something. I think, yeah, being proactive without being pushy can be a strongly valued skill. So definitely don't feel shy in asking if you feel like your needs aren't being met.
Yeah. Someone again asking around the CChem slide that I showed with all the breakout. Again, if you want access to the slides, just drop an email to careers@rsc.org. You can flag it for my attention, for the attention of Laura, or someone will pick it up. So yeah, just drop us an email. And we can take a look at that. I'm just going to pick one more question, because there's quite a lot of questions that have come through. So someone here is asking more around sort of change management, and I think you talked a little bit around sort of managing that sort of change. Do you have any recommendations or on how to improve or learn about sort of change management?
That's a really good question. This is a really hard subject, and that's something that, I mean, this is very topical for me because we're undergoing a lot of changes at the moment internally. I think the main thing is transparency in what's happening and why, but also, if you're going to need to make a number of changes, try to stagger them, because I think it can be really overwhelming for people to try and do everything at once. I think, we're all going to take time to adapt to new ways of working, or new approaches or systems. So I think it's really good to make sure you give people the space and time to do that, and also recognizing that if they've got a really heavy workload and they're needing to make quite large changes to the work for whatever aspect, to maybe take off some other commitments from them to allow them to get those things done, because I think we all tend to pile up with work, and then it can be really overwhelming when you're already kind of behind, and then suddenly you're expected to do all these new things.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So I'm going to thank you for all those questions and comments. There's some really nice positive feedback as well. So thank you for that. If we didn't get to your question and you really wanted a response, again, just drop me an email, and we will come back to you with any sort of advice or tips or signposting. So if I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody, but yeah, again, just drop us an email at careers@rsc.org. Just to finish off, just to remind those of you that are listening of the support that you can get through your membership with the RSC. There is lots and lots of support for members at all career stages. So whether that's you're just starting out or very well established and wanting particular advice, and we can give that on a one-to-one basis, whether that's consultations, whether it's emails. There's also lots and lots of guidance on our websites. And also do log into your membership area online, because there is tailored support there, so it will highlight the most appropriate advice for you depending on your category of membership. And like I say, do log into that careers support area, do register for the Abintegro tools, and do utilize those. And as I've mentioned, you know, if mentoring something that you want to access either as a mentor or as a mentee, just email. You can either email careers@rsc.org or mentoring@rsc.org. And also don't forget the networking that you get through your RSC membership. So whether that's through your local section, whether that's through your interest groups, you know, again, really thinking about building your network, but also thinking about actually what opportunities might there be for me to think about those kind of broader leadership skills that we highlighted at the start. So I want to take this opportunity just to thank you all for listening this afternoon, and also thank Natalie for her time as well. Like I say, do get in touch if you've got any questions or you want anything further from us, and thank you for tuning in. And thank you and goodbye. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.